You know that moment when someone asks you a question in a meeting or turns to you unexpectedly and says, "What do you think?" And suddenly your mind goes blank. You feel the pressure, you feel the eyes on you, and your brain starts racing. Say something smart. Don't mess this up. Why can't I talk or think right now? So you either ramble or over explain or say something you don't fully mean. And then later you think of exactly what you should have said. Today, we're changing some of that. We're giving you a simple mental script you can use in real time. So when you're put on the spot, you don't freeze, you respond with clarity.
Welcome to Communication Skills for Working Women. I'm Elizabeth.
And I'm Rose May. Do you find yourself second guessing or avoiding conversations because you're worried about being misunderstood?
You're not alone. On this show, we're sharing tangible tools for assertiveness, emotional resilience, and real life communication wins and fails.
Let's sharpen our communication together.
If this is a situation that stresses you out, you are not alone. I promise you, everyone feels this way. And if this episode helps you out, share it with a friend who's had that exact moment where their mind just goes blank under pressure. And if you haven't yet, leave a review. That's how more women find this podcast and learn these tools.
So, I'm going to share a story that is super personal for me. I was in a religious meeting actually, and we were discussing some principles, some topics that are pretty controversial around race and ethnicity. And I remember, and I was the only person of color in the room at that time. And I remember two things happened, like at the same time almost. The person who was instructing or who was teaching that class said something that was terribly insensitive and inaccurate, and then put me on the spot by asking me what I thought about that. So I was in the moment trying to process what they were saying and kind of like startled at what they were teaching, and then like put on the spot to respond to that. And I remember just like my mind did go blank, and I had like this surge of like extreme anger that was coming over me in the moment because what they were saying was so harmful.
Mhm.
And so it was just like, yeah, it was just this situation that I haven't been in this situation very often, and that's probably the most intense it's been. But I just remember my mind going blank because I had so many things going through my mind and through my body at the same time. And so my response, I can't even tell you what my response is because I don't remember. I just remember going back and thinking, oh, I should have said this, or oh, that would have been a better way to like handle this situation, or I should have spoken to this particular point. And I feel like I didn't represent all that I was feeling or that I wanted to say in that moment because I was put on the spot. It was
Right,
terrible.
right.
Essentially, is what I'm saying. It was very terrible.
Thank you for sharing something that's so personal and even a little bit more than, I mean, we could stay real surface level with this conversation, right? We could
Yeah.
be like,
Yeah.
okay, you weren't fully prepared for a meeting. You came
Right.
in and this agenda point, they said, like, tell me what you think. And you were like, oh crap, I wasn't
Yeah.
prepared for that.
Yeah.
But you're sharing something that's really deep that I actually think people experience in the workplace where personal things really like you get you're like you said you were flooded with anger. What they
Yeah.
said wasn't accurate. What they
Yeah.
said was harmful.
Yeah.
And those things happen in the workplace too.
Yeah. It's
It
true.
it does. And we're caught off guard a lot of the time. I promise you weren't going to church that day thinking you were gonna be flooded with anger.
Listen, I was just trying to praise my Lord and Savior Jesus Christ. That's it.
And how many times are we're at our job and we're like, I'm just trying to do my job. And all of a
Literally.
sudden, you're like angry at the person, or you're like, oh my gosh, like this, what they are doing is actually harmful and destructive to people in this organization.
Yeah.
And the other person may or may not even be aware of what they are doing.
Yeah, I don't know. I honestly I don't know if that was the case for this particular person. I like to give people the benefit of the doubt, but also I'm like, this is 2026 people. Um,
And I think that transfers to the workplace as well. It transfers to all of our
yes.
conversations. Like there is
Yes.
a level of awareness now that I think we expect in one another. And
I
then
think you have
when
a responsibility to be a little bit more self-aware
and
in my
then when
personal
other
opinion.
people aren't and it hits something in us, it
Yeah.
hits hard.
Yeah. Yeah.
Especially when individually you've done the work to be aware and
Yes.
someone else hasn't.
Yeah, and even just to be aware of like your audience. I think that, and this is something that translates like in every single domain of our lives, like just being aware of who's in the room with you. We've talked about that multiple times, and just the culture of communication that we create in those spaces where people exist who don't look like us or don't think like us or maybe have a different job title or maybe not maybe like in the hierarchy of our job just not anywhere near where we are. And sorry, I gotta share this, like just thinking about this in real time and thinking about an experience where I was in a job situation, and in the hierarchy of employees, there were some that were higher and there were some that were lower. And someone made a comment about the way that an individual had created something who was in one of the who was who was maybe lower in the hierarchy and didn't realize that that person was in the room. And it was actually like the group of people, so there was like a group of people, and I don't even want to say like the hierarchy because it's kind of descriptive but not 100% descriptive. But anyway, just made a comment about this group of people that works on this kind of project that creates something for us, and didn't realize that those people, like some of those people, were actually in the room. It was a very, very critical statement. And just completely unaware that they were there, like almost standing beside you. And you said something that was so incredibly critical and mean and harmful. I just, yeah, it's just, anyways, I think we have a responsibility to be aware of our surroundings as adults
Yeah.
and human beings.
These conversations when we've breached these conversations a little bit here and there as over the last year in these episodes, and every time there is this piece of me that becomes very uncomfortable as we're talking about this. And what it is for me that becomes uncomfortable is it's me wondering how many times have I been that person that has said the harmful thing?
Mm,
How many times have I been unaware? And in a professional environment, in a religious environment, even in my home and family, in my community, I'm just like, ugh. And so there's this part of me that really wants to give that other person the benefit of the doubt.
hmm.
And then there's this other part of me too that's been the person that's been hurt, that's
Yeah.
been filled with rage, that's been like,
Yeah.
oh my gosh, like how could those words come out of your mouth, especially when
Yeah.
you're in this position?
Yeah.
And so I'm really glad that we're having these conversations and can just bring light to them, can bring
Yeah.
awareness so that when we listen, we're doing both things like, oh my gosh, I'm the person who is in some type of position of power or authority. I'm going to be aware. And I'm the person that's part of this group. And I've just gotten really ticked off and angry. How am I going to move forward? So that's what we're actually going to talk about. We're going to talk about these real moments and what is really important to understand in our minds and bodies when something like this happens. So like when Rosemary was super ticked off in that moment but needed to respond, but then she's like, I can't even remember what I said, right? Because we learn how to just respond and say something.
Yeah. And the first tip is actually probably the most important one in this three step script that we're going to discuss really briefly. The first step is to buy yourself a moment. So just pausing with purpose. And I'm really good at doing this now. I think I stop to think about how I want to respond in certain situations. This particular thing happened maybe like 15 years ago, I want to say. And I just wasn't great at that. It wasn't even something that would have ever crossed my mind. Like stop and pause, because I think my automatic response is I do need to say something quickly. I need to answer, but you don't need to answer immediately. And I tell this to my clients too. You never have to answer immediately. Even a few seconds of pause changes everything, because without a pause, you react as I did. Without a pause, you respond, or sorry, with a pause, you actually respond. And that space allows your brain to organize at least one clear thought. So, a couple of phrases that you can use to buy yourself time. That's a good question. Let me think for a second. I've actually said that in interviews, I've said that in multiple spaces.
Yeah.
Let me take a moment to think about that. Or give me a second. I want to answer that clearly. This does two things. It buys you time and it signals confidence, not hesitation. I think where we get kind of caught up is we want to respond, or we want to respond so quickly because we're so uncomfortable as human beings with silence. Right.
Mhm.
And because you're pausing, you're actually creating some silence. And I think we recognize that people may be uncomfortable with that, but it's so important. And that silence can really allow, just as we talked about in the last episode, can really allow some space for reflection.
Yeah, for you and for that other person that just
Yeah,
said
and
something. I've had people pause before they respond, and it has made me go, "Wait, what did I just say?"
yeah. Or
So
other
I,
people in the room, right? Like anyone else, like because that was a class participant. That was a yes. There's many people in the room in that moment, but it couldn't give pause for others,
yeah.
right? Yeah.
I think there's something about the, you're right, we are uncomfortable with the pause. I think also we want to be quick to respond. We want to be looked at as competent and on
Yeah.
top of it. And so there's also a little bit of ego in there too of like, well, I need to be able to just respond quickly because I want to be considered smart and intellectual and able to clearly articulate something.
Yeah, that's so true. And I think that I felt that way at the time. And now I'm just like, oh, I'm not gonna let you tra I've reframed it to I'm not gonna let you trap me. I'm gonna I mean that's I'm sure no one's intention is mostly to trap me, but that's what I think. I'm like, I don't want to be trapped. Let me take a second and actually think about what I want to say so I
Yeah.
don't feel trapped.
And then just to even taking that second to check in with your values, check in with your body. Like, am I
Yeah.
breathing?
Yeah.
So,
Yeah.
all right. So the next thing that you would do is we just want to give one clear thought. So we've taken this pause, and when your brain is overloaded, you feel like you might have too much to say. So you just start talking, or there's nothing in your brain. You've just
Yeah.
gone completely into freeze mode and your mind is blank. And so you may just actually, when people go into freeze mode, there is a thing of mutism that people actually cannot speak.
Sure.
There's also this thing where we just speak and we're not even really conscious of what we are saying as well. And I think that happens frequently when we're put on the spot.
Yeah.
So you just start talking and things come out scattered. You're trying to organize your thoughts. And then really, we really just start rambling. So instead of that, we want to give one clear thought, just one. We don't have to handle the whole situation. Like what Rosemary was saying, when she was flooded with anger, they said something that was inaccurate. They said something that was harmful. Like there's many layers of things that would potentially need to be addressed, and it's probably not the right time to address all of the things. So you give yourself a pause and then you just think of one clear thought. And you can use some of these phrases. My initial thought is the key thing I'm seeing is I think the most important piece here is those phrases allow you this my initial thought. That's not saying I have this whole thing figured out and this is what I'm going to tell you. You're really just saying this is my initial thought, which opens up for further conversation. To go into a little bit more depth, you could say, my initial thought is we need to simplify this approach. Or you could say, my initial thought is there's a lot of things going on right here, right now that need to be addressed.
Yeah.
Or the key issue I'm seeing is that maybe we don't fully understand everything, or maybe we need to consider some other points of view. Then you can stop. You can always add more, but just start with one point. So you've taken the pause and then you've given one clear thought.
I'm thinking back to other situations where this has happened, and I'm thinking about my responses, and some of my responses have been the first thing that comes to mind. I think that's it. I say that a lot, is the first
Mhm.
thing that comes to mind. And that's been really, really helpful because I think by the time I get to the point where I can say the first thing that comes to mind, it's usually like after I've teased and sorted through everything that's been said, and I can find the one point that maybe is the most relevant or that I feel is the most important. And that's something that, yeah, that I've said in the past, and that's actually worked really, really well for me. So, after you say something clear, there's often a moment of silence. Maybe people are thinking about it. Sometimes this is where people lose it. They might jump back in. We might say something like, but I could be wrong, or I don't know, or that's just my opinion. And all of those things are true. But why do we say this?
I've said all of those things. I'm saying them to control the discomfort, to
Exactly.
maintain other people's emotions, to
Exactly.
make sure like I'm having this emotional response. And so I'm saying it even to calm myself down. Like
Exactly.
that's what I'm doing. I'm trying to maintain everybody else.
Yeah. Yeah. I think everybody does this. I don't know too many situations. And maybe it's this particular context. I don't know because we're so conflict avoidant in this context. But I think yes, there's a desire to ameliorate anyone's discomfort. There is a desire to fill the silence. And what we want to do instead of backtracking and saying, but I could be wrong, I don't know, that's just my opinion, we really want to stay grounded. So, an example of what feeling and staying grounded looks like is one of these. This is my initial take, or that's where I'd start, or I'm curious what others are thinking. So now you're staying engaged, but you're not weakening your message. You can stay grounded in what it is that you brought up with your initial thought or the key thing that you mentioned earlier without having to backtrack and not necessarily contradict yourself, but apologize for the situation.
Right.
Essentially, that's what you're doing is apologizing or making up. Yeah, yeah, you're apologizing for taking up space in some ways. And so using one of those phrases can be really, really helpful in staying grounded.
I utilize the I'm curious at what others are thinking often because in those types of situations, because when I've taken a moment, I've said the one clear thing, and then I open up in curiosity, it usually has created a space where other people feel confident in saying their one thing
Yeah.
as well. And it's given people kind of enough time. I've also been in situations where I have gone through this and I have said, I am really curious what other people are thinking, and the room has been silent.
Mm,
And I'm like, okay, others aren't feeling safe or confident or connected enough to be able to share their thoughts. Or I've come across maybe too aggressively and their feelings are different than mine and they don't want to say it. And so that always causes reflection for me when I say, like, I'm curious, and then there's no sharing.
yeah. Yeah, that is interesting.
Yeah. So
Yeah.
let's bring this all together. When you're put on the spot, use this simple script. So we gave you a couple options all throughout, but we're going to just give you one simple script. So first, you want to buy a moment. You want to just have that pause. And you would say, let me think for a second. Then you want to give that clear thought. My initial thought is, and then stay grounded. That's my take. So this is how you really move from like that feeling of panic or anger to clarity in that moment.
So here's your challenge. Before your next meeting or interaction or church service, write down just one sentence. My initial thought is, and practice saying that out loud. So when the moment comes, you're not starting from scratch. You're not trying to remember what we just talked about. You're not trying to be perfect in the moment. You're giving yourself something to stand on. If you found this helpful, please share this episode with a friend. And remember, speak clearly and listen bravely. When you feel confident in your communication, everything changes.
We'd love to hear your wins, failures, and insights on Instagram at Communication Skills for Women. Leave a review and connect with us.
Until next time, speak clearly and listen bravely.